On behalf of Tri-State Livestock News, the Fence Post, and Farmer and Rancher Exchange, I'm Sam Tenpenny, back with more Fair Cattle Markets daily headlines. According to Farm Bureau, the May Cattle on Feed report estimated lower placements of cattle on feed, which is normal for this time of year, but with higher marketings. In addition, much needed moisture is helping improve pasture conditions across the country, giving farmers reason to retain heifers for breeding purposes. While this would be the first step to expanding the U.S. beef herd again, a smaller 2024 calf crop projected by USDA means the first opportunity for expansion of the cattle inventory will not occur until 2025 as cattle feeders continue to add weight to what they already have in feedlots rather than adding more cattle. Domestic demand for beef is still strong, but tight supplies will continue to drive up grocery store prices through 2025, which will drive down consumer demand for beef, according to USDA forecasts. The U.S. Department of Agriculture announced the next steps it is proposing to address the many complex competition issues in agricultural markets and to create a fair playing field for poultry growers and farmers. USDA is proposing the rural poultry grower payment systems and capital improvement systems to address a range of abuses that have occurred in relation to grower ranking, commonly known as tournament-type payment systems, and additional capital investment requirements that poultry companies commonly ask their contract growers for broiler chicken. This rule is the third in a suite of Packers and Stockyard Act rules that USDA has undertaken to create fairer markets, which ultimately can lead to lower grocery prices for hardworking families across America. USDA is also announcing new publicly available cattle market transparency tools. These and previous actions are intended to enhance transparency, stop retaliation and discrimination, reduce cost, and support market fairness in a range of circumstances, furthering the department's efforts as part of President Biden's historic executive order on promoting competition in the American economy. If finalized, the proposed rule would prohibit deductions from the base price in contracts for broiler chicken growers, permitting only bonuses for performance. It would also provide critical tools to enable growers to better identify risks that may arise on capital improvement practices and enhance the ability for USDA to enforce existing prohibitions on unfair capital improvement practices. The rule would also establish a duty of fair comparison to ensure that grower comparisons, also known as tournaments, are conducted in a reasonable and equitable way that does not disadvantage specific growers. USDA is also finalizing a series of rules under the Packers and Stockyards Act as part of President Biden's executive order on promoting competition in America's economy. These rules complement a series of other all-encompassing actions by USDA to increase competition in agricultural markets, create a fair playing field for farmers, lower grocery costs for consumers, and strengthen local and regional food systems. Actions include enhancing independent meat and poultry and other diversified food processing capacity, expanding domestic, innovative fertilizer production, creating a fair market for seeds and other agricultural inputs, investing in state attorney general enforcement capacity to crack down on practices including unfair pricing, and supporting more robust and resilient supply chains. These investments will create better economic opportunities, which will result in more affordable prices and choices for consumers at the grocery store, in addition to more opportunities for revenue for producers. To complement these regulatory actions, USDA is launching a new data visualization tool known as the Livestock Mandatory Reporting Live Cattle Data Dashboard, which will provide users the ability to view and access LMR live cattle market information in a manner that is easy to use and to understand. AMS will also begin publishing additional information on the actual net premiums and discounts paid to cattle producers by packers under formula marketing arrangements and detailed quality grade price distribution information in hopes of placing producers on a more equal footing with large volume data users and to foster a fairer and more competitive marketplace. AMS is currently conducting demos and testing with interested stakeholders, with public access to this dashboard becoming available later this summer. According to the Hagstrom report, U.S. government officials announced the USDA will use $824 million from the Commodity Credit Corporation to bolster its current efforts to mitigate H5N1 in dairy cattle, as well as to launch a new voluntary H5N1 dairy herd status pilot program to give dairy producers more options to monitor the health of their herds and to move cows more quickly while providing ongoing testing and expanding USDA's understanding of bird flu after a third dairy worker contracted the disease. The first two farm workers who were infected with the bird flu, one in Texas and one in Michigan, developed conjunctivitis, which is also known as pink eye, but the third infected farm worker, who was also in Michigan but had direct exposure to an infected cow, is experiencing respiratory symptoms. USDA noted in a news release the new funding is in addition to the previously approved use of $1.3 billion in emergency funding to address nationwide detections in wild birds and commercial poultry operations. The voluntary H5N1 dairy herd status pilot program aims to create additional testing options for producers with herds that have tested negative for 3 weeks in a row. further reduce H5N1 virus dissemination, provide further opportunities to test herds that are not known to be effective with H5N1, increase surveillance and knowledge of the disease, and to support an overall national program to reduce the risk of H5N1 in dairy herds. Participating producers who test negative for 3 consecutive weeks will be able to move animals without additional pre-movement testing, which is currently required under the federal order, but they must comply with continued regular weekly monitoring and testing of their herd. USDA strongly encourages dairy producers to enroll in this new program. Beyond the benefits for their own operations, increased producer participation may help USDA establish state and/or regional disease-free statuses that could further ease compliance with the current federal order. To further help mitigate the spread of H5N1 on American soil, APHIS announced that it is restricting the importation of poultry, commercial birds, avian hatching eggs, unproduced avian products, and byproducts and certain fresh poultry products from the state of Victoria, Australia, while they consider all other states in Australia to be unaffected by the bird flu and not subject to restriction. According to Meat and Poultry Online, over 900 agricultural groups joined a coalition to ask Congress to implement a federal fix to California's Proposition 12, led by the National Pork Producers Council and the American Farm Bureau Federation. The letter sent on May 21st to House Agriculture Committee Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member David Scott laid out several arguments for damaging consequences of Prop 12. The groups urged Congress to include provision of the 2024 Farm Bill to prevent the possibility of conflicting state laws throughout the country that could complicate interstate commerce, and stated that without action taken to address the Prop 12 decision, the agriculture community fears massive compliance costs and forced consolidation throughout the industry. According to studies conducted by economists in North Carolina State and Iowa State universities, constructing new Proposition 12 compliant barns can cost 40% more than traditional barns and 25% more than conventional group housing, not including the estimated 15% higher operating cost caused by reduced productivity. Other concerns brought up in the letter include the negative impact legislation like Prop 12 could have on relationships with longstanding trade partners, as it undermines the ability of the United States to negotiate trade agreements across the globe and puts the United States at risk of retaliatory action on American agriculture products. That's all for now. Tune in next week for more Fair Cattle Markets Daily Headlines.